Dr. Andrew Huberman, I am pumped that you are here. I've been waiting a long time for this. We do this segment before a lot of these, and people are just infatuated with things like, what do guys carry to protect themselves? What are 5 things you can't live without? So I thought it would be a good segment to get you to talk about just 5 things that you can't live without that you use every day.
All right. I'll go high level and low level on this. High level, I'm going to borrow/steal what I think is the best answer to 5 things you need in life from Naval, who puts great content out on X. He's been on Rogan and others, and his content's amazing. But Naval said this, and I really think it beautifully describes what a lot of people are trying to figure out. You need adequate resources. So you got to figure out a way in life to have adequate resources for yourself and for the people you take care of, right? That's just reality. You got to figure out how to do that. And you want to do that, obviously, through legal means. And I would say, I would add to it, in an ideal world, you find resources, earn resources, doing something you love or at least are passionate about. This is ideal, right? With people you like or love working with. And it's really the trifecta if it can benefit the world too. Okay, so that would be box number 1. And then he said, and what I love about this is the simplicity. He said, after that, after you got enough resources, which can include a bit extra to buffer your anxiety. Whoever said, by the way, that money can't buy happiness, I totally agree, but money can definitely buffer stress. Mm-hmm. And anyone who says differently has a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So money isn't the pursuit, but you need enough resources to be comfortable, right? After that, you need a fit, healthy, energetic body. You need a calm, peaceful mind. That's the hardest one for many people, including me. And then the last one that he put in there was a home full of love.
Nice.
And I love that. So you need resources, a fit, healthy body, a calm mind, and a home full of love. Those are the goals. Like if you were to list them off, like I heard him say that and I just went, yep, those are the goals. I would add to those, for me, having a spiritual life, a relationship to a higher power, something bigger than yourself or than humanity, I think is essential. I just don't think the human brain was organized to be able to understand and manage itself well enough without this. And we could talk more about that if you want. I find that essential. And then, so that's some high level stuff. In terms of basic everyday stuff, sunlight. Anyone who says there's no sunlight where they live, well, if you're not living in a cave, there's sunlight. It might be cloudy, but there's still, look outside when it's cloudy out, it's still a lot brighter than at night, right? Yeah. You need sunlight. Our circadian biology is so fundamental to who we are. We go through alertness and sleepiness cycles every 24 hours. There is no escaping this. No technology will allow us to escape this. Sure, you could take something that wakes you up like caffeine or a stimulant, but you're going to pay the price down the line. I use caffeine, so not a problem. But the point is that sunlight early in the day and throughout the day is just critical. We need it. It's fundamental to the health of every cell in our body, brain and body. And then there's some good stuff out there that, I just feel like I couldn't live without. If I had to, I would, but, a good dog.
Nice.
Do you
have a dog?
I had a bulldog mastiff named Costello. I had to put him down in July of 21.
Oh, man.
In the early days of my podcast, we kept him in the room snoring, and so you can hear him in the background. I'm actually been out here in Tennessee. I've always wanted a red-bone coonhound.
Really?
I want a dog with a good nose. And Cam Haines got me into the whole archery thing, and I want to start bow hunting soon. So I really want a coonhound.
Very cool.
So a good dog. You obviously need good friends. Ideally, you have a great partner. Maybe some kids if that's your thing. Maybe not. But at some point, you gotta have a dog. I know there are cat people too, and we won't talk about that. But piss off the cat people right there. And then, for me, one of the things that's just been an incredible sustaining force has been friendship. I grew up in a big pack of boys, then we eventually became young men, and the romantic relationship is critical, family is critical, but friendship to me is like, it's like this God-given gift. It like just, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to me to just have and to reach out to friends on a frequent basis.
How many friends do you have? Do you keep the circle small, or do you let it expand?
Well, I have a lot of people that I consider true friends, and some of them I drop in with less than others. But I would say I'm in touch with probably 4 to 6 on a daily basis, just like a hey, what's up? Probably talk to each one of them once a week, and try and get in-person time, ideally.
Nice.
My friend Tim, Rick Rubin, that I'm in touch with daily. Lex Friedman, a little less often, but when we see each other, we really drop in. My friend Mike, my friend Rob, like there's like a daily thing. And I think it's just because I grew up in it, like that brotherhood of then young males, right, was just, it was like the reality check. It was my, it's just so many feelings of safety for me came from friendship. And it wasn't about being crewed up against the world or anything. It was just like, it puts some puzzle piece in every day to just go like, yeah, like I've got a crew, I've got a tribe of people that care about me. I definitely care about them. And I'm so proud of them. Like when I see them doing great things in the world, awesome. And when they're, troubled, like you're there, like there's not a whole lot that's better than that feeling. I wasn't in the military. I grew up big pack of skateboarders, punk rock world, that whole thing. But even in science, some of my friends, I had 2 friends from just the science world over the other night for dinner and just sitting there and we were just rapping about science geek stuff. I'm like, man, like that brotherhood is just so important. I don't know that I could live without it. I wouldn't want to live without it.
Man, those are great answers. I was not expecting that. I was looking for the low-level materialistic BS.
Well, listen, man, I got 1 watch, 1 Forerunner. Actually, I own 2 watches because 2 friends gave me watches for my birthday. 2 watches. I got,
What are they?
I have this Tudor ceramic black
Nice.
that Mike Blayback gave me for my birthday. And then Peter Attia, coincidentally, same birthday, gave me a metal Tudor. So
Nice.
I switch back and forth between the 2. And I mean, I've never had friends like give me watches and things like that.
That's awesome.
But I love these watches because I love those guys and I love watches. It was a link that my dad and I had from a young age where science and watches were 2 things that my dad and I could really resonate on.
Very cool.
He's from another country. There were a lot of things where we were different, had different interests, but science and watches just fit. And I love timepieces.
Nice. Yeah. Me too.
And I'm always late, so it's kind of ironic. Yeah.
How about the black shirt?
Yeah, that's it. So people who know me from the science world, like my friend Dave Feldheim, will vouch for this. I've been doing the long sleeve black shirts for a long, long time. I started getting tattooed really young. So I'm like wrist to neck tattooed. So part of it was I always sleeved up for work because even though times have changed and now you see tattoos more often, I believe still, and when you go to work, like for the sake of the students and teaching, it's like out of respect for them. It's like, let's not make the attention on my tattoos. Let's just make it about you. So it's a little bit of an attempt to kind of blank myself away and make it about the material I'm teaching. That's what I do on the podcast and in the classroom. I sometimes roll up my sleeves a little bit if it gets warm. But the other piece is that I'm a huge Clash fan. But more than the Clash, I love Joe Strummer from the Clash. And he did the Mescaleros, which was his band. He died young, unfortunately. But the Mescalero is amazing music. If you don't like punk rock music, Mescalero is amazing instrumental. He has a song on there with Johnny Cash, like just incredible band. And I've never saw them play live, but I saw this video of Joe Strummer playing in a button-down black sleeve shirt. This must have been like 2006, 7 or something like that. Sweating like crazy and long sleeves kept long. And I'm like, man, that's the punkest thing I've ever seen. He's in black jeans and black shirt, and he's just playing, and he's just drenched in sweat. No shirt coming off, no short sleeves, just like, it's hot? Okay, make it hotter. And I thought, man,
nice.
That's punk. And I'm just a huge Strummer fan. So,
nice.
So that's where that comes from.
Man, I thought it was maybe a decision-making process. I wear either a white shirt or a black shirt just so, and I don't, we make a lot of decisions during the day. I'm sure you do as well. And I just like to start off with easy decisions.
It does make it easy. I'm not tidy enough to wear white T-shirts. They end up with coffee stains and stuff like that. They last about a day. So the black also protects against, a little bit of poor coordination.
Good call. Good call. Well, I got you a gift here. It's everybody's worried about big tech
Oh, yeah.
invading our privacy.
Okay.
And so that's a phone. I don't know. Are you familiar with Eric Prince? I've had him on a couple times.
Okay.
But he developed that phone, and basically that has a lot of...
It's a phone.
Yeah,
it's not a phone cover. It's an actual phone.
It's a phone that it protects you from big tech tracking everything you do. And so there's a quick menu on there. You can plug in your own VPN. It has its own version of Signal. It has a kill switch. So I don't know if you know, but big tech can listen to you even when your phone's off. So this actually throws up like a thing in between the battery.
Even when the phone's off, they're listening.
Oh yeah. They can.
Remember a few years back when we used to wonder if they were listening, because then you'd go on Google and all of a sudden something would pop up that was related to what you were talking about, a couple minutes or even hours earlier. I'll tell you one story around this that makes me especially excited to have this. When I lived in Topanga Canyon, it's out in the middle of nowhere, where I was, I had a barrel sauna out back, and I was in the barrel sauna. A friend had come over and we were talking. My phone was up in the house. Okay. Seriously, like through a sliding glass window, closed glass window. Somehow we had a conversation in the sauna, went back inside, opened up my phone, and it was on topic for the conversation that had taken place.
Serious?
I'm not kidding. And I still can't figure out how that happened, but something happened.
It's crazy, man.
We had not had a discussion about that, except in the sauna for a very specific reason.
Wow.
And it was on my phone, top line, as a web search. And I was just
crazy.
Like, it just popped up. And I was like, whoa, this is incredible.
It's on everybody's mind. So that's called Unplugged. You can go to unplugged.com, grab it. But yeah, that has a ton of features that protects you from that. Amazing. And the biggest pain in the ass is getting over the Apple iPhone and onto that. But
so you use this exclusively for?
I use both.
Okay.
I use both.
Okay.
For the conversations I don't want anybody listening in on, I use that. And then for all the everyday, bullshit stuff, I still use the iPhone because it's just so simple.
Yeah.
But
so I'll call you on this phone.
Call me on that phone. I'll give you the bat phone number.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I'm stoked.
You mentioned one other thing at the very beginning, and you had said that, a calm mind. Mm-hmm. And that was the most difficult thing for you to achieve out of the 5 things. How do you do it? How do you achieve that?
So for me, everything starts with physiology. So I go to the physiology first when we're talking about practices. There's one caveat to that I'll get to. So for me, I really try and get my sleep right. I'm not neurotic about sleep to the extent of like a Brian Johnson or something where my whole life is anchored around sleep, but I try and get good sleep 85% of the nights of my life. And then for the remaining 15%, I hope that I'm missing out on sleep for good fun reasons. Right? Like a great party, or you're staying up late watching a great movie with someone, like these kinds of things. People can decide what that means to them. But so for me, that means going to sleep sometime between 10 and midnight, waking up sometime between 5 and 7 a.m.
Okay.
And then if I wake up in the middle of the night, I just do a lot of long exhale breathing. There's something called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. This is just nerd speak for the fact that when you exhale, it slows your heart rate down. It engages the vagus nerve, which is a so-called parasympathetic nerve, meaning it's part of the rest and digest system, it's sometimes called. It's energy conserving. And when you do that long exhale breathing, for a variety of reasons, it has the vagus stimulate what's called the sinoatrial node on the heart, and it slows your heart rate down. So anytime someone's having trouble sleeping, do some big inhales through your nose and then just slow like you're blowing through a straw through your mouth. Over time, you can get good at tricking yourself into falling back asleep using this approach. Okay, so I'll do that a few times and I usually just go right back to sleep. It's normal to get up once in the middle of the night to use the restroom. More than that, you probably have to ask questions about your fluid intake before sleep, make sure your prostate's healthy, this kind of thing. Then we can talk about that. All men over 40 should probably consider taking 2.5 to 5 milligrams of tadalafil, sometimes known as Cialis, but not for erectile issues, because it's very helpful for health of the prostate. We had a guest from Stanford, Mike Eisenberg, who's head of our urology male sexual health division. Yes, these low dose tadalafil that drug was developed initially for prostate health. So if you're waking up a lot in the middle of the night, despite limiting your fluid intake in the evening and nighttime, right, that's something to consider. I'm not paid for by big pharma to say that. That's just the reality. But the long exhale breathing, getting up once in the middle of the night, fine. But more frequent than that, then, you're probably ruminating on something. And it's very important to be able to turn off, this is using sort of yogic language, to learn to be able to consciously shift your brain from thinking and doing, thinking about the future, thinking about the past, from strategizing, spooling, to just pure sensation. The nervous system is basically a bunch of cells that translate physical things in the environment, like photons of light, mechanical touch, sound waves, etc., smells, chemicals, into neural signals. That's pure sensation. So if you can practice just sitting there and feeling how your hands are in contact with your thighs. I know this sounds crazy. Feeling your contact with the seat, just listening to the sounds in the room, you are perceiving pure sensation. You're just translating the physical signals of your environment into the nervous system language. Thought is basically taking internal workings of your nervous system and thinking about the future, thinking about this podcast, thinking of the thing you do. Learning how to consciously switch from thinking and doing to pure sensation is the way that's how you fall asleep. And when you fall asleep, you also forget about your body position. So a big part of learning to fall back asleep and of having a calm mind is to learn to turn off your thinking. And this is something that we don't do enough except in sleep, right? When we're asleep, we're not thinking about our thinking. You can dream, and we could talk about that. This is why I find it important to sometimes have an activity during the daytime where you're in what I call wordlessness. So going for a run or getting on the treadmill, and you're not like thinking, you're just letting your mind spool. That often will help quiet the mind. There are great data showing that if you do 10 minutes of high intensity interval training or 30 minutes of lower intensity cardiovascular training or even an hour and then sit down and do work, you are cognitively enhanced.
Interesting.
And I do believe that the reason for that has to do with brain-derived neurotrophic factor and elevated levels of epinephrine and dopamine. All of that is true. That is all true. But it's also true that the mind has a certain amount of like background RPM of chatter, and learning how to consciously turn off that chatter and fall back asleep. Learning how to just kind of take that excess mental energy, kind of forward center of mass cognitively is great unless it's time to sleep or relax. So a calm mind comes from having basically control over the transmission of your mind, if you will, the transmission system. And a lot of people, including myself, if you're, tend to be kind of like go after big goals, high achieving, motivated, energetic kind of person, you have a hard time shutting your mind off. And so it's important to be able to be really forward center of mass when it's time to do that, and also be able to just chill and be calm without drugs or alcohol. Now, a lot of people need or want to drink in order to be able to make that transition. I'm not here to judge that, but the reason that works is because it quiets some of the activity in the prefrontal cortex. People's conscious control over their mind's workings tend to relax a little bit, and that's why people feel like they quote unquote need a drink. But being able to do this just with your pure intention is a super skill. And I won't say that I've achieved that super skill, but the long exhale breathing and practicing just 5 minutes of being in pure sensation, just doing that during the daytime, will teach you how to fall asleep better. And after a great night's sleep, we're all familiar with how fully cognitively engaged we can be, how we're less reflexive, how we can control our physical and emotional and verbal responses much better. So that's what goes with a calm mind. That's kind of physiology. And then at the other end, right, I'm perfectly fine saying that for me personally, having a prayer practice every night before I go to sleep, sometimes in the morning as well, sometimes throughout the day, of just realizing I can't control everything. Mm-hmm. Lord knows I can't control everything. And having a way to take spooling thoughts or things that are troubling me or things that I'm just wishing for, or even just listening, paying attention, like what happens when you just kind of quiet and see what kind of messages come from outside. I do believe in the power of that, and the power of prayer is immense. I've just seen so much positive benefit in my life, and this idea that we can control everything is just, it doesn't make any sense. And there's a reason why this notion of higher power has been around for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Humans at some point, some humans realized this and passed this on. And to me, it's been the most important thing in terms of achieving a calm mind. It forces one to give up control over things you can't control, and to understand that forces outside ourselves are in communication with us, giving us examples, lessons. They're prodding us to do the right thing all the time. And if we stop and listen, you can start to see mistakes, evil. You can start to see good, not just good intentions. You can start to see right path versus wrong path, inside and outside. And I think without that stopping and listening through prayer, I don't know how anyone else can discern those different roads. Man. If they can, hey, more power to them. But I couldn't and I can't. I need that to be able to say, right road, definitely right road. Not sure, I'm not pointing at you for this reason. Wrong road, definitely wrong road. If that were all obvious, we would all make perfect choices all the time. Yeah. Because I do believe that people are inherently good. And some people perhaps have gone down that path of bad so long, or were somehow wired into that. But to me, so it's the physiology part. You have to master your physiology, learn to calm your nervous system down through long exhale breathing, through learning to shift into pure intention, through getting your sleep right, or pure sensation, through getting your sleep right. And on the other end of the spectrum, prayer and giving over certain attempts at control to a higher power and just listening for right path. It just never fails. It never fails. What does fail is not taking the time to pause and listen and pray. And then we all know where that leads. And you just look at the world. I think that the world includes so much great things, so many great things, and so many troubling things because of the lack of intention. And the lack of intention comes from lack of listening to what we know are the right answers. The right answers are clear. We just they're not always clear to us in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really glad you talked about prayer. I wasn't expecting you to bring that up, but I am curious, since we're on the subject. Everybody prays a little bit different. How do you pray?
So obviously it's very personal. So for me, even though I was told I don't have to do it this way, it's how I started. Our good friend Eddie Penny was the one who really got me praying. I grew up in a mixed religion home, so religion was really complicated for me. But in terms of prayer, Eddie was the one who was like, you don't need to make it a certain practice that looks a certain way. It could look this way or that way. But what's worked best for me is before I go to sleep every single night, I get on my knees, the side of the bed, like a little kid in a movie, right? But for me, this is what works. And I pray, and I pray for other people first. Then I spend a little bit of time listening, a couple of minutes just listening, seeing what comes up. Then I spend a little bit of time praying for things that I'm working on, challenges. I'm mostly praying for strength to deal with those challenges and for energy to direct my body and my soul toward goodness in the world. And then occasionally I'll focus on something that I might be especially challenged with or especially grateful for in that time. And then I say my thanks and I go to sleep.
Very cool.
And if I wake up in the middle of the night, I usually do the same. If I'm having trouble getting back to sleep. And I pray before every podcast that I record. And I just pray for being able to be in the right space to give the most amount of useful knowledge and goodness that I possibly can. And some people might say, well, these are just intentions. But, let's just say that the prayer is formalized enough. And I've spent enough time I'm just looking at and talking to people who really understand scripture to understand that, okay, that's not my expertise. I wasn't trained in that. But it's so very clear, right, to me, and we can talk about how this became more and more clear, that the brain has a sort of, I don't want to say good and evil, but it has a kind of organization of dark and light. Mm-hmm. It's not what we want to do versus what we're expected to do. That's a very cynical view of things. I just think that the brain is organized into impulses and intention, and intention controls impulses, and then they work together toward goodness. What is goodness? Goodness are the things that evolve our species in the right direction, right? Towards more prosperity, towards, less destruction, toward, less evil in others, because sometimes it exists there. And so whether or not that's through science or through the military or through social work or through family and raising kids and partnership, it shows up in different forms. But prayer to me is where you get back to the fundamentals. Like there are times in prayer where I really feel as if, okay, this is a brain thing, and clearly somebody understood at some point this was a brain thing. But there are two views in the world, in my opinion. There might be a third I'm not aware of. I'm sure someone will put it in the comments. You either believe that this whole God-devil thing exists in the brain and that it's a human creation, or you believe it comes from outside the brain. Mm-hmm. Well, I believe it comes from outside the brain. And I know some scientists will be like, oh, and people will be like, how can you be a scientist and say that? Well, I'm certainly not the only scientist who's ever said that. People who really understand and think about consciousness at a deep level are still pondering whether or not consciousness comes from within the brain or it's received by the brain in some way. And so to me, my training is in science, and I know a fair amount about health as well, but it's so very clear that this notion of higher power, that there are forces outside of us that powerfully determine how we behave. Powerfully. There's just no question.
Yeah.
And it squares beautifully with everything we know about science, including biology and psychology. So the two are not mutually exclusive. So, but to be more direct, I get on my knees and I thank God for all the gifts. I ask for help where I need help. I pray for people that I think might need help. And I spend an immense amount of time in gratitude. And Eddie has me reading the Bible, and there's just so much wisdom in there. And if any of this makes people kind of uncomfortable, what I'll tell you is that any brave person should be able to look at something, know that you'll hold on to yourself enough that it shouldn't be scary. There's always learning in these things. I think people are afraid they're like going to get sucked into some vortex of like where they're going to lose themselves, but it's the opposite. What I've found for me is that when you start to accept this whole concept, that you find yourself, you don't lose yourself.
Yeah, it's brought a lot of benefits to me, and we'll dig more into that in the main podcast. But I just want to say thank you for opening up about that, and it's very cool that you're doing that.
Thanks. Well, and I'm a newbie. Like, I want to be clear. I'm not an expert in religion by any stretch or prayer as a practice, but I've been very consistent about it. I've really felt the benefits of it, and it's if I had to pick one thing I couldn't do without, it's that.
That's awesome, man. That's great to hear. All right, let's get on with the main show. No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.